I was like starting my app. I was hosting a pop-up. I was about to go to this big inspiration trip to New York City that I do every year. And I had this health episode come out of absolutely nowhere where I fainted 200 times in 30 hours. And it was like heart to crown, heart to crown. Like that's just how it felt. It just kept happening over and over and over again. And it was like the biggest wake up call of like, you cannot
It's going to be such a good episode, such a special episode. We have another incredible guest on today, Nikki Norenberg, and I am just so excited to welcome her into the space. Say hello, Bella. We got the whole squad here.
What's up?
Beautiful. So Nikki Norenberg is here on the podcast because I'll tell you, Nikki, I've been really resonating with your words lately. Like when you speak about the motherhood journey, and then also everything you're navigating with this sacred in-between phase that you're in right now. I have been just reading your stories and reading your posts and feeling so drawn to you and just really just connected. And something that has been standing out for me is the vulnerability and the honesty that you've been bringing to the motherhood journey. Mm-hmm. And as someone who is approaching that age of, I just made the decision that I want to wait a little bit longer to have kids, but I definitely am feeling like, okay, in the next year or two, I'm going to be thinking about having children. And I'm starting to really connect with people online that are in that sacred space of motherhood, and they're sharing about it in a way that I feel resonates with me. And you are one of those people. And I would love to kick off this conversation with just you kind of tapping us into this insane transformation you have been on over the past, how old is Sully now? A year and a half?
16 months. Yeah. 16 months.
Yeah. Crazy. I feel like you've been in a fucking portal of like deep transformation. And it's been assisted with the birth of your son and even beforehand, the pregnancy and the actual birth itself. So I would love for you to drop us in on this really transformational experience and journey you have been on with motherhood. And I'm going to just throw it at you, and you can start wherever you're feeling called to, whether it be like the birth process, that was the transformation, or even just motherhood itself.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of this just quote that I've heard in like the motherhood sphere that is, and they're talking about this typically through birth, but I also feel that this is through motherhood in general, is that you don't get the birth that you want, you get the birth that you need. And I think that that also was really, really important for me, even in the initiation into motherhood, because I had a very, very intentional plan, in air quotes, going into my birth, how I wanted it to look. I did all of the work. I had my soul and my body and my mind all prepared, and things shifted in a way that I didn't expect. And that was just kind of like the preview into what my entire like first year of postpartum looked like. And I think that, we can have all of this spirituality infused into our lives, but when life has you in a very human experience, there is really like no backing away from like the human things that you're navigating. Like you can't meditate your way out of the intensity that you're upon and you've never done before, right? And so I think that that was the most humbling experience for me. Was I witnessed when I was in the most uncomfortable, unsatisfied places in my postpartum journey, was when I was trying to make it look like I wanted it to look, or how it looked in other people's lives. And it was like, you have to accept what is being brought to you, because, just like in anybody's relationship journeys or work journeys, it's like you're given what you need. And so I started to be like, okay, this is the curriculum that my soul is being given with my first child, instead of feeling like, wow, why is it this way? What could I do differently? Like all of blah, 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 blah. I was like, how can I just like wrap my arms around this and embrace that this is my journey and my story? And I think, for the first time in my life, I'm realizing that I'm inside of the story that I'm going to tell once I've like really embodied and understood the lessons of this journey. And I think that that's a really cool place to be, because so often we're in this hindsight of like, oh, that clicked and that made sense. But like being step by step inside of this journey that you're like, oh, wow, this is a life altering moment where I'm being asked to call upon parts of myself that A, I didn't even know existed. B, I'm experiencing things that I thought my tools would like immediately get me out of. And I'm just like being really massively humbled by the human experience of giving birth, raising a child, and completely having to re-relate to yourself and what you thought you were and what you thought you wanted to be. It's like the most reorienting experience of of human life. And I feel like since motherhood is something that like so many people do go through, and it's like, okay, it's a common thing, like congrats, you had a baby. It's like, no, it's a really fucking huge deal. And I think that a lot of people just don't talk about the intricacies. And, I'm going to go off on this little tangent about birth, but like I ended up having a very spiritual knowing, like right before I got pregnant, that I was going to have a home birth. Never thought that I would. And so I really immersed myself in the home birth community. And even in that community, it's like everything feels so washed with like, everything is blissful and beautiful. And I'm like, y'all, it is like a fucking raw experience. And I think that we talk about it in the home birth community, it's talked about in such whimsical fashions. And then, I'm like, where is the voice of the people who have like really gone to the edges of their human experience? Because this is like a real deal. No matter how you gave birth, no matter how your postpartum experience is, I think that you're handed difficulty somewhere, whether it's in conception, birth, postpartum. Every single woman gets handed a massive lesson or transformation journey somewhere. And I just have felt really passionate about being honest about my experience, because not a lot of people are. And I think people are afraid to, because they also don't want to like taint people's views. But the reality is it's a really transformational experience in the beautiful and really difficult ways.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, go
I
Bella.
no, I'm loving this so much because Nikki will know, Nikki Candelar will know that I have been actually really deep in like almost like the research side of birth because I think I told you this that I had a close friend of me here that was planning on having a home birth and she really involved me in her whole like pregnancy and that whole process. And so I was like reading the hypnobirthing book and I was listening to podcasts and really just wanting to understand just almost anatomically what birth is. And it was beautiful because on the one hand, it started to paint a whole new picture of what just pure like mainstream birth is made out to be like, which in and of
Hmm.
itself has many like flaws, right? And is very conditioned to make us afraid of it, right? Not from just being real about what it is, but being like, oh, is this going to just every movie, right, that you've seen that birth is like this crazy thing that not empowering crazy, like, oh my God, this is just the worst thing ever. Why would you want to go through it? And so by stepping into the other side of that, I've been really immersed in the world of hypnobirthing, home birth, and even I'm sure you know of this, the Free Birth Society that's run by Emily. I forgot her last name, but I listened to a whole podcast. It was like 3 hours from this woman, Emily, the Free Birth Society founder. And what I found to be quite beautiful was what you're pointing out, which is the marrying of, yes, the like blissful, mystical aspect of you're literally birthing a new life and you are the divine feminine that is literally working with God in that moment to bring a vessel to earth, which is insane, but also the realness of how raw and physical and actually making that out to be very sacred because of how deeply it drops you into your body and there's no escaping it. And I have now started to construct this new paradigm of birth that I'm very much looking forward to, that is bringing in like the lessons you're sharing around surrender and that you get the birth that you need, not that you want, right? And that doesn't mean you won't potentially experience the home version or whatever that looks like for
Hmm.
you. it means you get to take off the backpack that's
Mhm,
giving you more fear around birth. And I think that's the main thing that is
mhm,
starting to break down in the way you share. And the through line here is by you sharing your story and owning it, you're not tainting potential birth
mhm,
experiences. You're actually bringing an open hearted view that another woman who's about to go through that portal is going to feel relief. And that relief, if anything, would heighten the chances of getting the birth, quote unquote, that you want, right? Or being able
mhm,
to surrender to whatever the experience is. So, all to just say, I'm feeling so expanded by hearing this, and that I like to kind of point out the sort of themes and through lines that are in a story that people can take home. And something that I'm really hearing from this is deeper trust, deeper surrender, but also a deeper, almost like confidence in that you can handle this portal. And that to me is the empowering difference that would land you in any birth experience coming from power, not from fear of you can't do it or expecting it to be orgasmic and it's not, right? Like it just unfolds however it does. And that's what you need.
yeah, 100%. And I think that that's like that was my greatest teacher even in my birth portal was the ultimate presence, like even when like things started to shift and I was in a circumstance that I had to go to the hospital, I have never felt so present in my entire life. I've actually never felt so empowered and so knowing that I was going to be okay. And so it's like it wasn't handed to me in the way that I thought, but it was handed to me in a way that I could still access my power greater than I ever could. And I think that that is just like, I mean, the ultimate lesson of life is it's like God gives you what you need. And oftentimes like it's not in the exact way that you think it should be. And I think that that's when we can release our grip of what we think anything in our life should look like and we can actually get really curious and excited about the unknown and like what's ahead. Then it allows for the things that fall into place to be that much more empowering and that much more fulfilling because you're like, oh, I didn't think it was going to come through like this, but it did. So how can I embrace that? Because like I constantly can like anchor back into that moment when I felt that divine presence. And honestly, like even in my day-to-day life, when I feel like untethered in a place and I'm just looking to ground, I'm like, but just remember that moment when everything shifted in your birth. And sure, you could say that that's when things like turned in a difficult circumstance, but like what was happening inside of my body was sure and true and anchored. And I think that what I've just learned in this entire journey of motherhood and postpartum and like getting back into my body and my nervous system is like I thought I knew my body before this. And it's just like I know my body on such a deep layer and truly the listening to your body is what is going to save your life, your nervous system, your relationship, like everything. Your body is the place that holds it all. And I really think that when we can tap in and touch the places of knowing within ourselves of like, I know that I've got this, then it just like disintegrates any noise. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah. Can we talk more about this? Because this is just such an incredible segue to really go into more of like the body connection and the embodiment journey that you have been on all of these years. What do you feel like it means to be in tune with your body? Like if you were to describe that to someone who's like at level one of connecting in with their body and they're like, I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Explain it to me like I'm a kindergartner. What would you describe that as? That sensation, that action, that sense of being?
It's funny because my mind is toggling between like two different things. Like part of me wants to say, you know, that gut feeling and the butterflies, because I think that sometimes our body speaks to us in sensation, in big moments that we can all connect to. Like, you know, when you think about the first time that you felt like butterflies when you were young, or the first time that you knew that something wasn't right for you, you had this like sensation that was telling you like, oh, something is happening here bigger and greater than my mind. I need to listen. But I also think that when it comes to embodiment, there's also so much like neutrality involved where um, you're really tapping into knowing. you're tapping into this knowing and this peace of like, oh, something is for me because I feel at peace in my body. And so I really think that there is this spectrum of embodiment where you're getting sensations, you're getting these pings that are trying to wake you up to something. But then there's also a lot more of this subtle, just like return to your inner compass that is asking like, but does this make you feel safe? Does this make you feel like an exhale and not like holding your breath? But it's really all of these things that I guess now that I'm speaking this out loud, thank you for letting me verbally process this. It is like anything that is going to bring you back to this like homeostasis of peace and exhale, and I am okay. And I think that that is what like the ultimate embodiment is, because it is tapping us into our soul. And it's really one of the strongest ways that our soul knows to communicate to us without getting like, misconstrued with trying to get into our minds. The body is like, I don't have to explain myself. It is just something that you experience and you don't necessarily have to put a finger on. You just know. And I was recently in a conversation with somebody who said there is a difference between belief and knowing. And belief is when you're constantly trying to prove something, like prove to yourself that you are like worthy, or prove to yourself that, fill in the blank. But knowing is this no need to explain energy. And it's just this, yeah, it's like, I don't know why, but I feel this way and I am here. And I almost feel like that's when you know it's a knowing, is when you're like, I have no explanation, because your brain is actually not in the picture. You don't feel like you need to call forth your brain to prove it to yourself or to others. And you just get to own like what I'm feeling and sensing is my experience. And I'm moving forward with that.
Yes. Wow. Okay. What you just brought up is
I'm like,
epic
ping, 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 ping,
because
ping.
because it's very true that the entry point for a lot of people on listening to your body is more in the heightened states, which, like you said, can
Mhm.
be important, right? Especially, for the human design element, if you're a generator, listening to that excitement, it is a bit more bubbly, right? Even just for all humans, we can feel the more sensory, loud thing that you really can't ignore. But then there is the wisdom of the body that is essentially whispered, slash, you don't always know that it's speaking to you until you learn its language. And this
Mhm.
is something that the light bulbs I had going off for me was in the human design body graph system. When you understand what each energy center governs and represents, you start to learn this language of the body, because you start to realize that you are literally getting like in your mind that you think it's like you hear it, but it's really more this knowing, like you're saying, that is this little stream of communication that's actually like literally scientifically coming from different centers of the body. And that's why, for example, the spleen speaks in these like little instincts. It speaks in these like little singular phrases about like this, go over here. This is interesting, or whatever that is. And you feel it, you know it. The root speaks to us in a different language, right? The emotions, the sacral, the G set, like it all speaks in different ways. And
Mhm.
what you're pointing out is something that is accessed, I think, through, and I'm curious what your perspective is on this, through almost more of that pulling back and the silence, because it's so subtle that if you've been ignoring it, you just didn't even know it was there, right? You didn't learn to speak the language, so you heard just gibberish. As soon as you tune into that, you literally mine all this wisdom out of the body. That's how the soul, that's how the field speaks around us, right? It's like hitting the nodes in our chakras and sending us information. So I'm curious, and I know Nikki also you had other stuff to say, but uh yeah, how you feel like a person starts to tune into that, and even what your own process was of almost that like next level of listening to the language of the body versus just the sensory experiences of it.
Yeah. I think that movement and momentum in general is important in the human experience for us to get clarity, right? And so like when it comes to like listening to your body, I still think that there is, to your point, like this element of like exploring the curiosities and going out there, because it's also giving our bodies something to respond to. And even in like my own personal practices, like in embodied, in my class, like we build up to this part that I call the flush. And it's like this all out, like you're at your peak energy and you're flushing the energy up because you're moving energy. And then I pop you into stillness because it's like once we've been moving and we've been going and we've been in this curiosity state, we're getting responses from the universe. Cause I think it's very hard to just be still without any feedback first. And so I think it's almost like getting into curiosity state and actually like exploring different avenues of what you've been curious about pinging or wondering about, and then allowing yourself to then be in stillness or silence and presence with yourself to really ask like, okay, but when I sit and I remove all of this feedback and I really focus on how did I receive it in my body? Like that's where all the magic is, right? And so like after the flush, when people sit in this silence and this stillness, it's like all of a sudden it's like there's nothing that you're trying to hold back. There's nothing that you're trying to be. There's no mold you're trying to fit in. You're just with yourself. And I think that the whispers of the body require both movement and stillness, and not necessarily more one of the other. I think that they marry each other, and I think that they're important to go hand in hand. I think that, and that's really just like my whole thing with meditation is like, I always had a hard time sitting still in meditation. And I'm like, but girl, like if you move and if you get your energy active and flushing, then you're kind of clearing the noise. It's almost like a brain dump for the body. And then when I sit into stillness, my meditations are so much more impactful because I'm like, oh, I just need to clear the noise. And that's my way of doing it, because the way for me to fast act, like for me to quickly access my body's wisdom, I move first and then I'm still. And whether that be in a practice or like moving into the world through curiosity, I think that, yeah, they go hand in hand. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's where I just went.
There is
No,
such
that's
an
so good.
insane healing component to this too, with what's happening on like an energetic and a subconscious level. And I'll share a little bit of my own personal journey. I've been on a really beautiful path of connecting more with my body. And I think that's also why I've been really resonating with you. And when you hosted the workshop inside of the Oasis, it was like very game changing for me. And the reason is because I grew up feeling very disconnected from my body because I learned that, okay, you need to like control what you eat so that you can stay thin. And when I'm around food and when I'm around any sort of like body movement or fitness, in the past, it always felt like it was this means to achieve an outcome, and an outcome that if I didn't achieve, I wouldn't be safe. So, of course, I wasn't viewing my body as this beautiful entity that has its own language and wisdom. It was this thing that always needed to be controlled through the means of maybe food or movement. And I want to share this because I do feel like there are so many, I was going to say females, but I'm just going to say people out there.
Mhm.
We live in such an insane world that is constantly telling us like what to eat and what not to eat. And it always not always. It kind of comes from the goodness of people's hearts where they're wanting to protect and tell people the proper things to eat and what's a healthy diet. And I think when we're living in that world of needing to control things in order to feel safe, the body just doesn't have its proper place in our journey and we feel that sense of disconnection from it. So I'm just having these beautiful moments of reflection as I'm hearing you speak about this process of like moving your body and then having that moment of stillness. I can't even imagine how many girls go to your workout class and they leave there feeling so connected to their body in a way that is healing them beyond what I think anyone can even fathom. And the healing aspect of this is just so incredible because it's releasing that grip from up here with the needs, the shoulds, and you're really creating this bond with this physical, beautiful entity of your body that changes the entire path of your life. So I just wanted to reflect that back at you that the work you're doing is just so freaking incredible and so needed in today's society where this is just such a common thing. So I would love for you to speak about maybe if you have any sort of personal journeys with that as well, of how connecting to your body has led to healing and maybe some other messages that you would share with anyone that's experiencing that.
Yeah, of course. I think that, and I spoke about this a little bit in the Oasis workshop, but it's like we all have some sort of connection to movement from our youth that originally was really pure, really like expressive and really playful. And I think that that is where our soul is first like the most authentic self. And then we kind of go into these organized sports or art forms and it just shifts into these like, oh, it should look like this. And, of course, we're learning discipline and there's like positive elements to it. But I also just think that we maintain that desire for outcomes based, aesthetics based, discipline based in our adulthood, yet we're also like leaving so unfulfilled and unsatisfied and still trying to control
Mm.
so much. And I just feel like I continue to find myself in these conversations with people who are just wanting to move for fun again and for freedom and for expression. And then they're starting to realize like, oh, it's not just fun. It's actually like really therapeutic and impactful. And for me, like my journey with my body and dance is um, a little bit like non-traditional from what I feel like the typical dance journey was for or is for a lot of people. I feel like dance in the beginning of my life like came very naturally to me. It was like it was an easy gift and I just pursued it and I did well and it was like the one thing that I like really excelled in. Everybody knew me for it. I didn't really have to try that hard. And so I had this just kind of like laissez-faire relationship with it. But then when I really decided to own it as my identity and I like started running a professional dance company and choreographing and then I ended up moving to Los Angeles to pursue it professionally. It wasn't until I was in like my mid to late 20s that I had like all of my quote unquote dance trauma, where I feel like, when you're doing dance for a profession, it is no longer really for fun. It is like a complete cutthroat environment where if you don't look a certain way, have a certain body type, have a certain way of moving and being, like you're out, and they're not very kind with their words either. Like I remember like solely somebody telling me like, I want you to move exactly like yourself. I want you to be so fully you that we feel it. And then like this one instructor like called me out and essentially like went totally back on her word because she wanted me to dance like she wanted me to dance. And so it just like completely tarnished my relationship and I almost had this like literally physical stiffening of my body where I was like, I didn't want to listen to music anymore. I didn't want to take dance class anymore. My expression just like stiffened and shrunk because I was like, wait, this thing that was so natural and so easy to me, all of a sudden I'm feeling like now I'm bad at and I'm not good enough. And it's like really interesting to experience those thoughts later in life. The way that it just like infected my brain and completely just like made me question my entire identity, my entire life, my entire like talent journey with dance. And all of a sudden I was like, was all of this a lie? And I started questioning everything. And that's when I really shifted into yoga, which was such a like peaceful, like, what's the word? Accepting, no discipline, like come as you are. If you don't want to do anything, if you want to lay down, please do. And I was like, I need the permission to be as I am. And so, that journey, of course, like opened up an entirely different era of my life. I got into coaching and yoga and spirituality, which I am so deeply grateful for. But I always felt like something was missing. I was taking all these classes and I just like didn't really want to go back into a dance class because it just brought back old things. And so I really was just like, what was it all along that like I loved about dance? Was it performance? Was it artistry? Was it community? And I was like, and I just like remember getting a flash of myself, just like we had a little studio in our basement growing up, finding myself there many, many nights, just moving for me, moving through emotions. Sometimes I'd be crying, sometimes I'd be in enjoyment. And I was like, oh, it's about the feeling. Like I just want to feel that emotive, expressive feeling again without it having to look and be a certain way. And so that's when I really started just like workshopping the class of embodied. I was like, okay, it's repetition, it's freedom to express, it's not having to be on the beat if you don't want to be, and it's being in this journey of being at our like most playful hype empowered woman, but also at our deepest depth where we're able to go places. And I think so many movement and embodiment spaces are either one or the other. It's like somatic trauma healing or booty ass dancing. And I'm like, I think that we are such multidimensional beings. We have to allow ourselves to experience that we can be all of those things all at once. And so I started just playing with different music movement types and music types and just being like, well, wait, this feels so good to journey within myself and to just feel expressed without it having to go anywhere. And that's really how the class embodied came to be, is it was really something that I was craving. And then the more that I spoke to people, whether they had a dance background or a non-dance background, they're like, I need that. And I think right now in 2025, structure is like fucking leaving. It's like we are trying to rewrite everything and redefine what it means to be humans on this planet. And a lot of that is like throwing old modalities and disciplines out the door and like creating our own.
Wow. I actually was just getting quite emotional hearing you speak about movement and dance because I think you know this, but anybody doesn't know, I also have been a dancer all of my life, both in just like a self-identified way and trained as a ballerina for a long time, and just always found myself in the world of dance. And now as an adult, what I'm adding here is just for context. Part of my dance journey is kind of similar, different, but I quit doing ballet my senior year of high school because it was at a Russian studio and it was so intense. And I was like, I'm a second semester senior. I just want to like potty and not have to come in on Saturday morning to rehearse my fucking nutcracker shit. Like, I'm out. And so I took a break from it. And then, of course, went to college, started to miss it, and I found shuffling as a thing because it was so fun and crazy and different. And there was such a learning curve to it that if you get into shuffling, you got to really like be in to just see what happens, because when you first start out, like, you look fucking ridiculous. Like, there's no chance that you start shuffling and you're just like crush it immediately. It's very counterintuitive. So you're really just there to have an experience with the music and to just see what happens with your body. And you have to essentially surrender being good at it at all because you're going to fucking suck. It's counterintuitive. So point is, there is something that started to awaken in me again, which is like that childlike love for dance and moving the body that brings you right back into connection with source and with the divine. And of course, when we're kids, we're not thinking about this, we're just in it. But as an adult, what made me emotional was to think about how your class, which I feel so lucky I got to take one time in Austin, it happened to be that I was there and you were doing a class. It was the best. And that build to the flush and then the stillness, like, oh my gosh. I remember bawling my eyes out and not even knowing why, but being so okay with it. And I just really want to call out, like, hey, for anyone that is listening to this and wants to check out your work, whether they're in Austin or when eventually when you have it online, I know you have your online version of it too, but regardless, just to know that movement and dance really can be this phone line to the divine, to yourself, to pure joy, to moving all sorts of emotions. And the way you describe it is just really hitting my soul, because that's how I've always felt about dance and movement, and why doing it for fun, but then also realizing when you surrender and let go, it actually kind of does start to look cool and good and whatever, but it's not really the point. And it's something that I'm excited, and I feel so. I remember I sent you a voice note a few months ago when you did I think this was the summer embodied series, if that was that long ago. And I remember voice noting you and I was like, what you are creating is revolutionary. And this is going to change the world. And I mean that because the way you speak about it, you're holding the language of what movement and dance really is in kind of its most OG form. And I feel so excited that you are honoring this calling and that you are bringing it to the world, because it's absolutely true that we need this. And it's the body and like the 3D aspect of what it's, this is the gift of being on earth, of incarnating as a soul into a human form, is we get to fucking dance. We get to listen to dope music and dance around the fire and connect in with how our ancestors did it. And that is something that will awaken generations, like for people to really feel that. So I'm just sharing this emotion because it truly is that sacred, and it, to give someone just hope in a way of like, if you see the way that someone moves and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to feel that, you can. It's built into you, it's natural to you. And I just love that you are bringing this to the world because it's so fucking important and so needed. And the way you speak about it to me is like you are the correct, like, what's the word? Not shepherd, prophet? I don't know, something, whatever. The person who's gonna, there's like a word for someone who's gonna like carry this.
Pioneer.
Yeah, I don't know what the word is. You are a shepherd is not correct at all. I do this all the time. I just like say a random word that is not correct, but whatever. You are the correct carrier of this mission. And I just,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Well, and it's so interesting, right? Because like I never would have imagined that I'd be here. Like I've had so many identities that have been very specific before I got here. And but then all of a sudden when like the breadcrumbs of life brought me to this place, I was like, oh, it all makes sense. And I started like looking back at everything that happened for this moment to happen. And I feel like even within the vision and the mission of embodied, really like I still also don't know what it wants to become beyond what I know of it now. But what I do know is that this all makes so much sense for the way that my life story has evolved. And even like in this place that I'm in right now, which is like so much unknown, I feel as though I've just learned that when a when unknown shows up in your life, let's like call it an entity, all of a sudden there's like this void of unknown. I feel like a lot of times we look at it as this scary thing or this problem that we need to solve, but I feel like it's actually like this angel visiting you, being like, you have no idea how good it's about to get. Because every single big life shift, big expansion, big clarity bomb that has ever dropped into my life has been immediately following a place of the unknown and not being afraid of it. And I think that that is just like the massive medicine, really, for anybody in a place of unknown right now is like, how can you dance with unknown? Because truly, when a void shows up, it is a call to pause, and it is a call to be with yourself, dance with yourself. Like you can berate yourself and tell yourself like all the ways you're not doing things right, or you can literally like be in your body, dance with your body, and just continue to say, I have no idea how good it's about to get. And I feel like that's just like this place that I'm in right now is I'm like embodied is just like right here, and I feel the energy building, and I also have no idea when, how, or where it's going to expand in the way that it wants to. Um, so I feel like I'm in this really unique place right now where I have this mission, but there's still also so much I don't know, you know?
Oh, we know.
You familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, for everyone listening, this is just such a sacred part of the path. You have this seed that's planted in your heart from the day that you're born, and even before that, that is just always unraveling and growing, and you're watering it, and you're going through the challenges, and then maybe one day you have a little bit more awareness on it until there's this like overflowing sense of like the knowing that you're describing of this just makes so much sense. This is the mission. This is the purpose. But then there's that in between phase of, okay, now what? And we always say, Bella and I, it's like, it's not something that needs to be figured out. It's something that comes through you. And the fact that you're so connected in with the body as this beautiful vessel, the wisdom is going to just keep unraveling through the body. And this moment of free falling is so fucking scary because you're looking around and other people are maybe at different points and you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do right now? And I feel like this deserves maybe a little bit more. Let's just like talk about this a little bit more because we definitely attract a lot of listeners to the OMI community that are in this sacred phase of being in the in between, and to share the vulnerable and honest feelings that are coming up during this, but also those little things that you're doing. I know you just mentioned that it's the dance, it's connecting to your body, but how are you spending your time in the in between?
Girl. Okay. Well, I'm like, we might be opening up a whole can of worms. Okay, so for some context, I had a very dysregulated nervous system post birth, and I don't think I realized how dysregulated it was until I had this like crazy health episode. So, I really like had no sleep and like all this stuff and was really working off of like the lowest baseline ever. And then once I started to like sleep a little bit more, feel a little bit better, I traded it for jumping right back into entrepreneurship before I really gave my body the nourishment that it needed to like hold what the vision of embodied requires. To really come out in the way that I wanted it to. And so I just was like, okay, I feel more myself. I'm just going to hop back in. And I hopped back into my life and I was doing all of this amazing work. And it was like this week that I was like starting my app. I was hosting a pop up. I was about to go to this big inspiration trip to New York City that I do every year. And I had this health episode come out of absolutely nowhere where I fainted 200 times in 30 hours. And I just felt like it was like heart to crown, heart to crown. Like that's just how it felt. It just kept happening over and over and over again. And it was like the biggest wake up call of like, you cannot be heart to crown without being in your root first. And
Mm.
so what's so interesting is I felt like I was in this empowered place of moving forward with my vision and I felt great, but my feet weren't even planted because my nervous system wasn't regulated. And so that truly like ripped the rug out from underneath me. And so I've actually, since that happened at the end of January, since then, I've been on this like really rudimentary, just like rebuilding process of my nervous system. And the way that I've been doing that is I've been like going back to really like home cooking meals. I'm like drinking bone broth first thing in the morning. I no longer drink coffee. I like make a lot of my own meals. I'm doing more sound healing. I'm doing a little bit more yin. I'm doing some of my embodied practices like at times of the day that I typically wouldn't. And I just feel like I've been really on this like start from the ground to rebuild my nervous system back up so that I can start to embrace all that embodied is. So I am like feeling like I'm just getting back into a place of like my nervous system feels better, and I'm also being very cognizant about not being like, okay, I'm good. Let's just pop back into like my old MG way of being of like scatter, scatter, scatter. Like that's more of like the shadow side of the MG is just like I can be everywhere all at once and do all of the
Yeah.
things. And it's like I also really am in this place of trying to prioritize like what is true to who I am. And I think, you know, as a 4/6, I'm realizing like, oh, in person is where I need to be to fuel the energy that's going to move this forward. So I switched my model from doing like smaller classes to these like big pop-ups, and I'm like funneling my energy through these big pop-ups that's also going to funnel my energy into doing like all of these like online things that I'm building and creating. But I really had to start like truly from the ground. And also I should say this too, it's like I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but I'm just ripping here.
No, I love
But
it.
I
I love it.
I feel like so much of the woman that I know that holds this massive vision of embodied, like when I think about how she shows up in her day to day beyond like the woman who is like hosting all this like big, amazing life, like impacting stuff, I'm like, she is cooking meals for herself and her family. She is grocery shopping, like she is organized, she is proactive, she is making bone broth, like these simple things that are though the foundation of the identity that is building the woman that has this like really powerful modality. I'm like, I'm going back to the basics. So like that's where I've been living for the last couple of months is I'm like, I am embodying the most simple ways of being and living that I know that the version of me that holds it all without having her nervous system crash, like who she is and how she holds herself, even in the most fundamental ways. And it's, you know, it's impacted the way that I mother, it's impacted the way I show up in my relationship with my husband. And I think that it's really cool to peel back sometimes from not having to focus on the actual vision of what you're building, but instead the roots of what grows that, of who you are first, and see how that impacts. Because I feel like by me tending to my roots and my nervous system, it's just like naturally allowed for me to show back up in like the embodied world in a much more empowered and expansive way.
It's connecting exactly to what you said at the beginning of the episode, where God's always giving you what you need. And in those moments where you were describing the fainting, holy crap. I mean, 200 times in 30 hours. God bless Jesus. This is just
Yeah.
like, it's just such a it's honestly such a beautiful representation of what you just described, of how you will always be gifted these experiences of exactly what it is you're needing. And as you're describing this journey of like being in the in between and not jumping right into it, you actually are building your business in the way that you are meant to build it, through the nervous system work and through the body. So someone who's like very logic focused would look at what you just said and hear what you said and be like, yeah, they're not jumping right into the business and taking all the masculine action and there's more yin, but really you're understanding what actually is needed in having this mission come to life and what it truly takes to have that flourish. And it's just so, you really can't make this shit up. Like, you're always gifted exactly what you need, but also you're always going through the exact thing that then you're going to teach to people. So, like, you have been going through this incredible portal, and like the moment you had Sully and this whole timeline, like, you really can't make it up. It's all perfectly divine to your path. And it's like you're being gifted this opportunity to expand your nervous system to be able to hold a room of over 100 people moving and dancing, and you are holding that space for them. It's just so incredible to see how the universe is always gifting us this beautiful journey. And the component of surrender and trust is just, they're just so essential. They're important. And if we grip and if we control, we actually may miss what we're actually meant to be doing in these in between moments. So I'm just inviting this higher perspective for even the listeners that the in between is actually setting the groundwork. It is the expansion work, it's the nervous system work. And if you guys listened to Ava's episode, we'll drop you in, Nikki. She described this concept called the waiting room, where right before a new timeline is dropping in, you're sitting in the waiting room, and she described it like how when you were younger at a doctor's office, there were all the toys and the highlight magazines, and you were doing all the games. And in that waiting room, you're not sitting there like clenching your fists waiting for the appointment. You're having fun, you're playing. And she used this analogy to describe how these chapters are meant for us to really expand and to be present and to do the nervous system work to prepare yourself to hold the reality that is dropping in. And when you perceive it that way and you see it that way, you get to surrender, you get to trust. There's an unfolding that happens that is beyond what your logical mind can make sense of. And then you're also planting the seeds and setting the foundation for something really beautiful to grow.
100%. And I think too, like, all of this is just making me think about, when we craft a vision for ourselves. And I think, obviously, like, I think creating visions for yourself are very, very important. And I think not getting hung up on the vision looking exactly as you think it should be painted, because I do believe that that's sometimes where we get disheartened in the process and we get kind of like, oh, I thought it was going to look this way. And I think that it's just like, while we're in this waiting room, it's really being like open to um what it is, because at the end of the day, like, how I've started to rewrite the way that I connect into my vision is just like the version of the person that I am. And it's almost like that version of you that's like at the end of like the most fulfilling day that you've ever had. It's like beyond all of the like accolades and like the things that you're like, fuck yeah, like I did that. That's like my vision, my impact. But it's like who you are at the end of the day when you're just like sitting on your bed, like soaking it all in. It's like the feeling and energy of who that person is. Like, that's what I've been trying to anchor into, is the really like, it's the less like outward focused energy and more of the like who you are when you're alone after you've had like the most fulfilling day. And how does that feel? Because I think at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter how that happens. It just matters that you actually get to that place. Because I think that, we can chase these highs and these energies, but it's really like who we are in the intimate moments within ourselves that are the ones that we actually can like receive all that is and all that we've created. And so that's just been like a little narrative shift that I've had with myself, because I'm like, yeah, I could paint the picture of all the things that I want, and I would love for all of that to happen. And what's the feeling of the person who holds it? Because that's inevitably what we want. You've heard 1,000 stories about people that have everything and are miserable. So it's like mostly focusing on the version of you that has all the things, and let them be your North Star instead of like the entities of the vision, you know?
Yeah, it's incredible. Also, just the alignment of, oh man, I just think people now are finally realizing the correct formula. And we call that a lot. We'll just say it's like the be, do, have formula,
Mm,
right? Maybe you've heard of, which is just
yeah.
like, I think the way you described it, though, so descriptively and beautifully of the person you are at the end of the day when you lay on your pillow, because that right there, because also think about if you are dissatisfied with your life when you're laying on the pillow before bed, that's when your mind is like, oh, So pinpoint what you believe that all these things are getting you. And this is, of course, how we change our life. And we are even surprised by what comes through. I think this is what, speaking to just someone who, this is kind of like what the past self version of me would be questioning is, you know, because we're so conditioned to think that the things that we have make us the person that we are, we then worry about, well, if I just focus on who I am, how do I know then, how's the vision going to happen? And the cool thing is because we understand we live in this vibratory reality, this soup of frequency and energy, that it's that beingness, that person that you are, that just effortlessly draws in, right? Because of law of attraction or, being a match for that thing. But even better yet, you open yourself up to, and this is how you are speaking about your embodied vision, is you open yourself up to what's actually the highest version of your vision. And the initial visioning gets you to connect with the version of you. It gets you to take the steps, right? It gets you out of your comfort zone. Amazing. But the beingness, dropping into that person, is what then opens you up to the truly mind blowing version of the vision that you couldn't have imagined. Like, yes, you imagine parts of it, but then God swoops in and is like, check this out. Like, this is even cooler. And I want people to really feel into that, because that is the bomb for when the visioning is dropping you into lack and dropping you into, well, I don't have it, or how am I going to get it? And it puts you into the magnetic state to be able to handle the unknown. I think that's the big piece here, is where it's all coming together, is the work you're doing on your nervous system. Honestly, like the simplicity of the woman that you are becoming, the woman that you're revealing yourself to be, that is what actually creates the experience and the conditions for someone to hold uncertainty, for someone to hold the unknown and let it fuel them. And I know that that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is they have a program that is interpreting the unknown or the lack of a plan per se as meaning I'm not safe, or how am I going to get, how's this going to happen? Or I'm a failure, or I need to know everything that's going on in the plan in order to experience it. And to be able to shift out of that into total trust of the process, you actually then are showing up even more. You're taking even bolder action, because bold action is natural when you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be great because I trust the
Mhm,
plan.
mhm. Oh yeah. Well, and it's just this like journey of not living in your head like so high. It's like you have to be in your body, like you said, to be able to handle the unknown. And I think that the head it also just like feels so like "Ugh," in your body. Like when you think about it, when you think about like dropping into the body, it's just like spreading out the energy and being able to feel your feet and feel your hips and feel your gut and your heart. And whatever that looks like for people, like for some people, it might just be like walking in nature. But I think that really like in the practice of getting out of the head and into the body, it's just like whatever works for you, whatever access point allows for you to feel physically your body, that doesn't feel like it's a conditioned relationship, but it feels like a connection to the divine, is what's going to support us in just like holding an even greater capacity. And I think it's like people have to also remember that it's productive, right? Like
Mhm.
we think that doing this is like wasting time, or you know, keeping us from the momentum moving forward, but it's like that could be the thing that gives you the most momentum in your entire day. That could be the most productive thing that you do. Shifting your state, choosing to get into your body instead of staring at your computer, like toggling between all of your screens, trying to figure out an Instagram post, right? It's like notice, I would almost say this is like also medicine for myself because I am in no way, shape, or form like perfect at this at all, but it's like when there's a sticking point in anything that I'm doing, it's like, does it ever get figured out by just like sticking harder and like staring harder and thinking harder? It's like, no, I oftentimes think that when we get stuck in something, it has to be felt through. And so it's like maybe you take that on a walk, or maybe you turn on a song and you shake your ass, whatever you need to do. But I just think that whenever there's a stuck point, like let that be an alarm of like, okay, body time, like because the brain is just going to keep digging its feet in, and that's not going to take me anywhere.
It's truly fucking life changing. I know it sounds so simple what you're saying
I
right
know.
now, but I've been implementing it into my life and it's life changing. Like the other day, Belle and I were in a work session, then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go on a run. It was fucking 80 degrees out. It was so hot, but I did it anyway. And I felt so good. And I came back and I showered and I sat back down at my computer and I was in flow and it was just so amazing. And then sometimes something that like you guys have both really inspired me to do is just dance in my room.
Mm,
And I'll put on really powerful music that just feels like such a release for me. And I'll just shake it out and dance it out. And same thing, like when I sit down to do a meditation after moving, it is so different. It's so
mhm,
different. And it's just crazy that this is not talked about more. So I want to echo what Bella was saying, how this is really needed and it's a mission and a purpose that was planted in your heart specifically because all of the wisdom you're sharing today is very individual to your path and who you are as a being, and the way you speak about it, it just hits and it lands because you're speaking about it from experience and knowing. That's the thing, you're
mhm,
speaking about it from a state of knowing, and it is
mm,
just so powerful. And I'm having just so many moments of healing for myself throughout this conversation because in my own life, I've recognized when I focus on my energy, I don't really have to try that hard to like make things happen. And I think there's a very beautiful sequence of like, okay, you kind of like do have to go through that phase of like white knuckling it and trying to give yourself the confidence that you can do it and to gain your awareness on your powers and your worthiness. And then you get to a point where you're like, I actually feel like if I focus more on the beingness of who I am and I let go, the universe is always going to surprise me with these miracles that I don't even need to guess what they are anymore. Like they're just these beautiful gifts that come from the universe. And I've been reflecting this back to Bella, and we've been having these really beautiful conversations about you can think of these spiritual leaders like Eckhart Tolle and Michael Singer and all of these teachers that you don't see them hustling. Like you don't
right.
they're doing work. Like they're writing books, I mean Michael Singer is working every day at his center in Florida. Like he's working every day. But
Mhm,
you don't see them like going out and trying to grip and explain and like it's just who they are, and
mhm,
people gravitate towards that. And I've been realizing that our ability to create safety from not needing to actually do anything, like creating
mm,
safety without the conditions of what we think we need to do to create the safety. So
mhm,
letting go of what we're saying, oh, I need to get this thing and then I'll feel safe. The more we can release that, the more we can let go, we actually find home in presence through the body, through the now. And that is when things just start to come to you in this
mhm,
very effortless way. So I'm just highlighting how what I'm learning from you, even in this conversation, is a part of that process because
mhm.
safety in the body is the signal you send out to the field of like, I'm ready to receive. Because if you're
Well,
not
because
safe in your body, you're not receiving.
exactly. Well, and I think that safety in the body is this alignment of coming back home to yourself. I think that like our entire journey here on the earth is to like come back home to our soul in like the purest, truest form that we often first connected to in childhood. And then we have all these conditions and, life experiences that happen. And I think that we're always trying to come back to our truest, purest form. And that is safety. Like when you think about like even like witnessing Sully, like he has no idea how unsafe things are, right? But he does them anyway because he is just this trusting light being that is here to experience like the fullest that he possibly can. And I keep trying to remind myself that in witnessing him. And I'm like, this is what we're all striving to come home to. And I think that that's why like movement is like this fast, surefire way of doing it because, to everything that we talked about, Bella at the beginning too, it's like movement brings us back into this childlike state where we're able to access this safety and this like coming home to self. And that's where we really attract from is when we're actually being ourselves without
Yeah.
needing to be anything else. And I think that when we are in movement, everything moves around us. It's like movement attracts movement. And it's like if you feel sticky or stuck, it's like just movement for you, even like, like having a conversation, movement of any capacity. And it doesn't need to be productive. I like want to keep like reiterating that, but it's like any sort of movement that is taking your energy and using it is going to move energy through you and toward you. And so it's like, and that's where this whole thing comes back to is like, we receive so much from stillness, but we gotta get moving to receive it. We gotta get moving to receive the messages, the guidance, and all that is meant for us. And that happens through coming home to ourselves through the movement.
That part about coming home just hits so
Mhm.
hard. I'm like, that is exactly it. And I want to just highlight one thing and then I'll pass it to Bella to share what was coming through her. But you align your most authentic timeline that feels so good. Like you wake up in the morning and you're like, this just feels like it's me when you are able to be you. And this is what you said. I'm just saying in kind of my own language here that when you create the safety in the body, that's when you can actually express your unique essence. And then you start to attract the people that are a match to that. You attract the opportunities, you attract all of the things into your life in an effortless way because you're just being you. And then you look at your life and you're like, yes, this is all a reflection of who I truly am inside. And it's interesting to think about that a lot of people are living in realities where they're looking at their career and they're saying, wow, this is like so not in alignment with my soul, but they're not feeling safe enough to be who they truly are to actually be in a reality where their career reflects who they truly are. And it's safety is just such an important part of this conversation because it's really everything. It's seriously everything. And I just wanted to add that in.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. Yeah. I have this really deep feeling that when people listen to this, they're going to just receive so much potent wisdom about the body. And it really is so important because I think, especially when you awaken and you get on the spiritual path, and our listeners really they find this when they have kind of had that crown third eye opening moment and they see things differently. And then really where we come in is we're making it all, align and cohere into this mind body soul state. And I would love to have you share anything that you think, maybe this is like a little intuitive channeled moment, whatever feels right for you, of what our listeners or what someone who is finding this at this moment, whenever they find it on the podcast, what a final message, word of wisdom that you would love to share with someone. And then if that wants to segue into how they can connect with you or find you, but just starting with something that you believe is on your heart that someone would love to hear.
Mm. I just feel like the first thing that's coming up is just you're okay and your body already knows the way. You just have to take your hands off the handlebars. It's this sense of like truly feeling safe and connected in your own body and in your heart, and knowing that you were placed here for a reason at this time, with this life circumstance, with these life lessons for a reason, not to put you in intentional pain or discomfort, but to stretch you and grow you. And if you allow yourself to receive this place and time in your life with open arms as the greatest gift that could possibly ever show up in your life, the doors are going to open in a way that you've never even imagined they could. And I think that it's the ability to soften into a state of like receivership and receiving that life is compiling the perfect scenario for you to become the person that you came here to be, and to trust that, and to realize that not one thing is misplaced. Every single thing has its place and its purpose. And if you can truly just like keep tuning back in to the subtle knowing that you don't have to explain, then you don't have to worry about anything. Period.
Wow. So beautiful. Oh my gosh. For a second, I didn't see, I thought your hand was someone else coming in and I was like, wow, what's happening?
No, just me.
Wow. Incredible. Nick, is there anything else you want to ask or bring up in this conversation before we close
I
out?
think I touched on everything that I wanted. I feel like literally everything that was on the top of my mind, I was like, check, check. Yes. I received so much. I just want to say thank you. It was so beautiful. This conversation was so enlightening for my own journey.
Good. I'm so glad. And I mean, there's these conversations need to happen more often. And I think
Yeah.
that, normalizing them, and, I even at this like mom group that I'm in, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start bringing like really reflective prompts to our hangouts, because I'm like, we need to be talking about these things. They can't just like fester in your own head, and like,
Mm.
we have to be really like conversing about the things that we're experiencing, and the humanness and the spirituality and the depth of what's happening right now, because there's so much shifting collectively and personally. And I just think that we need to be using our throat chakras to like bring all of this awareness and this clarity and this confidence to light. So I would even just like invite the listeners, like, I challenge you to have one conversation about your body, or your intuitive experience of knowing your body this week with somebody, because we need to be having these conversations, and I think it clarifies everything for us.
So beautiful. I love that. What a perfect invitation. Amazing. Okay, so we would love to have you share anywhere people can connect with you, anything you have interesting going on that you want to put out there. Our listeners are definitely very interactive. You'll probably receive some messages from people listening. The Omi gang is the best. So
Love it.
definitely let all of them know where they can connect. And for the listeners, you guys tuning in, definitely reach out to Nikki, let her know how this episode landed. Follow her on Instagram, connect with her in all the places, and yeah, let them know where they can connect with you.
Yeah, Instagram's the easiest, Nikki.Norenberg. And then I have two self-guided programs that I've created that are about a 3-week experience. One that goes through the depth of the chakras, and you get both moving meditation audio files that get you into your body, and you get the full embodied experience. And then I also have more of a clarity activating 21-day experience that is very similar programming. But those are a really great opportunity for you to connect into your body and your own self practice, and connect into the work that we've been talking about. So I can send you guys links to those as well if you're interested in trying them out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Beautiful. This was such a joy, so divine. I can't wait to hear how people receive this. I know it's going to be so timely for them. So, yeah, I'm so grateful. Thank you seriously for taking the time and connecting with you. And I also just love seeing your face. I'm like, I love that I just all my long distance friends, it's like so sacred whenever we get to connect, and I just feel so energized just from being in your presence. So thank you so much. We love you so much. And Nikki, if you want to add anything else, and we'll close it out.
I just want to say thank you again. It
Yeah.
was a true joy.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, ladies. You're the best.
Amazing. Okay, bye everyone.